All right, today we're jumping into a really cool legal puzzle from the ancient world. We're calling it the case of the incomplete ritual. It's a fantastic lesson in how ancient law works.
So think about this for a second. Imagine you're in a situation where everything has to be absolutely perfect. The stakes are sky high. But what if you mess up? What if you only get part of the way through? Is the whole thing just a wash? Well, that's the exact question we're going to dig into today. To really get this, we first have to understand the setting, which is everything. We need to feel the immense pressure of performing a ritual at the ancient altar. Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story is happening in the courtyard of the ancient temple in Jerusalem, and it all centers on something called the external altar. Now, this was not just some pile of rocks. This was the main stage for most of the sacrificial offerings. It was a place of incredible holiness, where every single move, every single procedure was supposed to be done with absolute precision, no room for error, or so you'd think. So in this kind of high-stakes environment, you'd expect the rules to be super strict, right? But here's the twist. The ancient sages revealed this surprisingly forgiving rule. You could almost call it a rule of imperfection. And this is where things get really interesting. This is the heart of the mystery, right here. The Talmud tells us that for these offerings, even if the priest only did one of the required blood placements, the offering is still considered valid. It works. It actually affects atonement. Now that seems to completely contradict that whole idea of perfection we just talked about. And this really lays out the whole problem, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got the ideal, the by-the-book way of doing things. That meant either 2 or sometimes 4 separate placements of blood on the altar. But then you have the accepted reality, where just one placement was, well, good enough. Legally, it counted. So what gives? How is that possible? This apparent contradiction is exactly what got the ancient sages going. They couldn't just let a rule like this stand without understanding where it came from. So they went on a quest to find its source. Because you got to understand, for them, a law couldn't just pop out of nowhere. It had to be grounded, anchored in Scripture itself, in the Torah. So they asked the million-dollar question. Where on earth does the Bible say that an incomplete ritual is actually okay? The hunt was on.
Now, their search didn't lead them to some big, obvious legal passage. No, it led them to something much smaller. A tiny clue, hidden inside a single word.
And this is the verse they landed on, from the book of Deuteronomy. And the blood of your offerings shall be poured out against the altar of the Lord your God. Now, at first glance, it seems pretty straightforward, maybe a little general. But the secret, it turns out, is hiding in plain sight. The sages zoomed right in on one specific Hebrew word in that verse, yishafek, which you say as yisafek. This one word is the key that unlocks the whole thing.
Okay, get ready for the big reveal, because this is it. The word yishafek means shall be poured out. But, and this is the kicker, it's grammatically singular. The Torah doesn't say the blood placements shall be poured in the plural like multiple separate events. It says it shall be poured, as if it's one single action. And from that tiny grammatical detail, the sages concluded that one single act of pouring, just one placement, is enough to fulfill the core of the commandment. Amazing, right?
So, okay, we found the source, we cracked the code. But what does this little grammatical clue really tell us about the bigger picture? So let's just recap the logic here, step by step. It's actually pretty brilliant. You start with the problem, an incomplete ritual. Then you have the ruling from the sages. One placement is enough. The proof? That singular verb from the Torah, yishafech. And all of that points to this profound principle. As long as you perform the core, essential part of the action, the fundamental obligation is met. So what we've really found here isn't just some dusty old legal rule. It's a guiding principle. And it shows this incredible wisdom, a balance between the ideal of perfection that we're all supposed to aim for, and the practical, even compassionate, need for acceptance when things, don't go perfectly. And that's really the big question this whole thing leaves us with, isn't it? This tension, this line between perfect and good enough, it's not just an ancient problem. It's everywhere in our lives. So it makes you wonder, how does that same line shape the rules, the expectations, and the systems that we all live by today? Something to think about.